Welcome friends, welcome back to the kitchen. So today I'm gonna take one for the team and we're gonna make cinnamon buns, but instead of using water or milk as the liquid for the cinnamon bun, I'm gonna use coffee. I've got a bunch of ideas of how to get different flavors into breads or bread-like things. And I'm trying to work out how much flavoring should be in the liquid in order to impart that flavor into the bun or the roll. So today we're going to start with coffee. Now, I don't drink coffee. I could never stomach drinking a cup of coffee. We don't have coffee in our house. We don't have a coffee maker, anything like that. But I love the flavor of coffee in things. So we're going to make coffee flavored cinnamon rolls today. Now, in this bowl for the stand mixer, I have 500 grams of flour. To that, I'm going to add sugar. And I hear you, you don't want to weigh anything. I've also given in the directions volume measurements in cups in order to make this. Today I'm using instant yeast. It's a very fine instant yeast. You don't need to bloom it ahead of time. To that I'm going to add the salt, and I'm going to make sure that I mix that really well. Get them all mixed together there. Look at that, salt and yeast together in the same bowl. Fantastic. Okay, so now I'm going to take the salt and yeast, I'm going to put it in with the flour and the sugar. It's going to be fine. It's going to be okay. Don't worry. I've got some butter, and I've cut the butter up into little cubes. I'm going to put that in. And I've got 2 eggs, and I'm going to crack the eggs in. 1 egg. And 2 eggs. Well, that one's got a little bit of a blood spot. That'll be okay. Now to this, I'm going to add the coffee. This is 1 cup of coffee. And it's body temperature. You want it to be body temperature or cooler. You don't want it to be hotter than body temperature. And a lot of people get really freaked out by this. Don't get freaked out by it. If you can hold it and it doesn't feel warmer than you, it's fine. It'll be okay. It'll even be fine if it's room temperature or right out of the fridge. Liquid right out of the fridge, it's going to take a little bit longer to rise. So when they say 1 hour in order to double in bulk, it may take 1.5 hours or 2 hours to double in bulk. And part of that also is the temperature of your kitchen will also affect that. So the only critical point to think of when you're dealing with the liquid is not hotter than body temperature. Other than that, it'll be fine. So in that goes. Now I put this on the stand mixer with the dough hook, and this first mix, I really just mix it together until I get like a ragged ball of dough. And that's where I stop it. Now, I'm just going to walk away for 15 minutes. I'm going to leave that ragged ball of dough in the mixer. And there's a very technical term for what's happening here, although this is a modified version of it. There's something called an autolyze rest, where if you were doing a true autolyze rest, you wouldn't add the salt or the yeast until after the rest was done. I put them in ahead of time. I know that it's not a true autolyze rest, but it really does help the flour to rehydrate, to grab up all of that moisture. And then when you go to knead it, the kneading is a lot easier and you get a better end result. So I leave it for 15, 20 minutes. I've gone 25 or 30 minutes if I get distracted by something before I come back to knead it. About 20 minutes has gone by, and you're going to look in the bowl and you're going to say, it hasn't changed. And it hasn't changed. It looks pretty much exactly the same. But we're now going to start to knead it. So I'm going to put it on. I'm going to put it on the 3rd notch for this particular mixer. And I'm going to let it go for about 10 minutes until we get a nice, smooth, elastic ball of dough. Now, this is a fairly sticky dough, so I think it looks pretty good the way it is. And you don't need to use a stand mixer. You could definitely do this out on the countertop by hand all of that kneading process. But the problem is, because it is such a sticky dough, kneading it is a little bit more difficult. Now, I just leave it in this container. I'm going to put a lid over it. I'm going to set it aside. It's kind of chilly here in the studio today, so I'm going to say at least an hour and a half for it to double in bulk. So I'm just going to stick it on the back counter and do something else in the meantime. Okay, the dough is looking pretty good. We're just about ready with that. So I'm going to make the filling. Pretty easy. I've got a pot. I'm just going to put it on sort of a low heat. I've got a whack of butter, and to that I'm going to add brown sugar and cinnamon. And the idea is you just want to melt the butter, mix in the brown sugar, get it all melted together. And you don't need to have the heat too high. So while that's melting together in the pot, we'll get our dough out onto the bench. And it looks pretty good. Now, I don't put flour out on the bench anymore. There was a time I put flour out. You know, everybody tells you flour the bench, lightly flour your work surface. And I did it, but I found that that added too much flour into the mixture. And also, it made it harder to shape. This is kind of sticky now, and so it sticks a little bit to the countertop, which makes it easier to pull it out, because you pull it out and it kind of sticks. So we're looking for something that's more rectangular than I currently have it, and about 1/4 inch thick. So don't be afraid to pull it and shape it. You're not going to harm it by pulling it and shaping it at all. And after you get the hang of it, it'll become so much easier. Okay. That looks pretty good. Maybe not as rectangular as it should be, but I think that's fine. Okay, I've got a glass baking dish that I'm going to put these in, and we've got our filling here. And you want to spread the filling evenly over the top. And it could get a little messy. There's a lot of butter here. Even-ish. Now, I've got some currants. I'm just going to spread those in. Generally, I don't plump raisins or currants before I use them in a dish. And we should talk about that at some point. It really has to do with how they're processed today versus how they were processed, 50, 70, 100 years ago, and moisture content. That's a talk for another time. So I put in some currants. You could put in anything you want. You could put in raisins. You could put in nuts, pecans, peanuts if you like peanuts. Next, we're just going to roll this up. Seen this a million times. Nothing really new about it. And the filling will run out a little bit. So we're going to cut this into 12. Okay, so that process was a little sloppier than I had hoped for. I had the butter and brown sugar mixture a little bit too warm. I should have melted it together, let it cool down to room temperature. I got impatient. I moved a little too quickly. If you let it cool down a little bit, the butter won't be so runny, and it'll spread easier, and it won't run out as you're rolling it up, and it won't make a mess like this. But the good thing about making a mess like this is that it's going to taste fantastic no matter what. It just might not look too pretty. So at this point, I'm just going to cover this with a clean tea towel. I'm going to let it sit on the counter for maybe about an hour until they bulk up again. I'm going to preheat the oven, so come on back and we'll bake them. Okay, looking good. Taking these to the oven.
Hey Glenn, hey friends, you're
Jules.
concentrating very hard.
Well, if I was doing this, I would actually tip them all out, right? And then you tear them off.
Okay.
But I'm trying to leave these relatively intact. Now,
That looks pretty good.
not uniform.
No, but that's okay.
You know, on the
Whatever.
baking show, it would be those are not uniform.
You'd be sent home.
So when I
Is that for toast? That looks really good.
yeah, so this is the filling, right? And so when I put the filling on, I put it on too warm. It should be like this when you spread it on. So if you let it cool, it hardens. But I saved some behind, which would be great to smear on the top if you need to.
I was going to cut another piece there just to make it easy.
Okay.
All right.
Let's give it a go. The actual bun part looks really good. Mm-hmm. Okay.
There's something that's keeping it from being a sweet,
Yes,
special treat for me.
it's the coffee.
Oh, that would explain it for me.
So I don't taste coffee, but I taste that it's not,
It's somehow cutting the sweetness.
it's cutting the sweetness. Because the filling is, well, you saw it, it's just sugar and butter. Like it is pure sweet. So the coffee's kind of dialing that back a little bit.
Interesting. Well, coffee is a bit of a bitter flavor to me. It's not something I inherently like. So, but I don't taste it. Like it's not like I taste
Okay.
it.
Okay, that's what I was getting to. So it's
Yeah.
not, this is not bitter. There's no bitter flavor.
No, but
There's no
it's
coffee flavor either.
No, but it's somehow taking away. It's not the sweetness that I expected.
So it's dialing back the sweetness somehow. Now, if you,
Now, when you tell me there's coffee,
Mm-hmm.
and when I breathe in the flavor, flavor,
yep,
it's like, okay, I can tell that there's coffee because you said it. It was because I was inhaling the scent, not because I was eating
not
it.
because
or,
you're tasting, no.
Yeah.
But I think if you liked coffee, they're
Well, I've got some coffee eating friends. I'll have to.
so they're gonna give it a go.
I have some coffee drinking friends.
So I think as an experiment, adding coffee worked out. I might not do it again because I'm not a huge coffee fan. But if you are a coffee fan, this introduces a very subtle flavor.
So, what other flavors could you add? Like, what about if it was hot? No talking? No talking.
Don't give it away.
Oh, there's going to be more?
Well, what the next flavor try is. I've got
Oh.
a whole bunch of ideas in my head
How many cinnamon buns can we...
of little bits of different types of flavor that I think go with cinnamon sugar that I think would work in this.
I think there's lots of things
Yes,
that would
so-
go with cinnamon sugar and sugar.
So we're just going to keep on going with this theme. Every once in a while, I'm going to pull out that dough and
That's
throw
good
another
that you said
flavor on
every
it.
once in a while because I don't think it's probably a good idea
It's
that
not
we
a-
do this 3
no.
or 4 days in a row.
it's not, and
This
it's
is
not
just
even
too
not even
much to eat.
not even every week. So I think for coffee lovers, this would be great. Not a huge coffee flavor, but some sort of deep undertone that changes how you interact with what is a sweet bun. Thanks for stopping by. See you again soon.